Thanks for listening to Pit Stop with Don and James. Today, we are going to talk about a huge start for Lando Norris. We're going to talk about several different penalties. We'll be talking about an excellent finish for Haas. Welcome everybody to Pit Stop with Don and James. I'm Don, and today we don't have James, but we do have...
I'm PK, Patrick. Hi, everybody.
All right. Yeah, welcome, Patrick. Thanks for filling in for James, who is currently at the Long Beach Grand Prix.
Yes.
He has kind of a family tradition, and they go out there and go to SoCal. He's actually from SoCal, so he likes to go see the IndyCar race, and I think they're doing IMSA as well, the sports car.
They are.
And in fact, I think the Grand Prix for IMSA was yesterday, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah, it was Nasser won. Team Porsche, Penske, they win a lot, so he's the points leader right now in IMSA. This is such a great weekend for racing, just globally. You know, we have Bahrain, we have Long Beach for both IndyCar and IMSA. Topah for Australian Supercars was this weekend. A lot of action, a lot of fun stuff going on. Man, this is one of the best weekends of the year that you get for auto racing.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't been out to Long Beach, and I'm sort of a novice when it comes to IndyCar. IMSA is I'm not as I love to tune in when I can, but I don't know the teams. I don't know the drivers. It's a little bit out there for me, but I do. I am a little excited here to have you on the podcast to talk about some of this stuff, because I think you and I sort of have the inverse relationship when it comes to the racing. Like, I am all the way in on Formula One and on the fringes of everything else, and you're like all the way in on everything else and on the fringes of Formula One. Just to kind of give our listeners a little bit of background about you. You're one of my good friends from when I lived in the Austin area, and we used to chat a little bit about auto racing and music and guitars and things like that. I can see your guitars behind you. So we were good friends back then. I moved away from Austin, and we've kept in good touch for the last few years since I've been gone. But, tell us a little bit about yourself, Patrick.
Yeah, I really started with auto racing when I was a little kid. My dad always watched the Indy 500 growing up in Houston. And so I remember it became our tradition really early on, where it was like, the 1980, 1981, 1982, like that. Those were the races I started watching. And it just, it got me hooked on IndyCar. And then when there was this race, I want to say it was 92, when Scott Goodyear and Al Unser Jr. were battling for the win, and little Al got him by, just a hair. In fact, this is one of little Al's die-cast cars. This is a Panos G-Force chassis. But that just made me a believer. And so I watched IndyCar pretty much religiously from then on. I used to go, there was a clay track in Houston called Big H Motor Speedway. My dad would take me there to watch like the Outlaws run and the midgets and things like that. So that's really what got me started with my love of auto racing. Never really got into NASCAR, so I'm not really a NASCAR fan. But open wheel racing on both sides of the pond is huge. I like Formula E. I think that's exciting. It sounds like a dentist drill when they run, so that's the only hard part about it. But the IndyCar stuff is really, to me, it's the best racing in the world. But speaking of best racing, this was one of the best Formula One races I've actually ever seen. Bahrain is such a great track. You've got the long straights, you have several passing zones, a lot of DRS opportunities. I know we can get into this, but the safety car deployment kind of stacked the field back up and gave everybody a chance to get to the pits. And I thought that made for really good racing in the second half of the race as well. It was a really great race. So I'm super excited to talk about it.
Awesome. Yeah. It was a good week for you to fill in. Cause there's a lot to talk about. We don't have to
Yep,
scrape the bottom of the barrel for stuff to discuss about the race. Um,
precisely.
yeah. So, I got a text from, actually from James's brother, uh, who's also really to Formula One. And he is making the declaration. This is what round four, the fourth race, third race.
I
Gosh,
think it's
man,
fourth race. Yeah,
Australia, China, Japan,
yeah, I think it's the
and
fourth.
now
It's the fourth.
Bahrain. So yeah,
Mm.
by race number four, he says this is the best Formula One season we've seen in a long time. He didn't put when the last best one was, but I can say that since I've been watching this. This is the most competitive and most parity we've seen. We saw that in
Yep.
the race today. I think it's still pretty evident that McLaren has the fastest car, but they aren't so dominant that they're just running 1-2 like the way maybe Mercedes was 4 or 5 years ago, um, and so I think it's kind of up for grabs. I mean, Lando. I think today squandered a little bit of opportunity, but let's go ahead and start with sort of just some overall uh, discussion of the race, and I agree that it was it was a great race, and I almost felt like this track is so conducive to overtakes that other tracks we need to start looking as almost like a model for some of the other races is like how do they set this thing up? Because there was a ton of passing. There was passing all up and down the grid. There was battles for points. There was battles for podium. Um, so I mean that was fantastic. I thought. Uh, so that's my overall impression was that it was just this. It was a competitive race. There was some jeopardy. There was a little bit of a few touches here or there of cars coming together. There was a couple penalties. In fact, we're kind of waiting on penalty news. Our listeners should know this is like 15 minutes after the race end that we're recording this. So there was some investigation for George Russell with a DRS infringement that we could. I'm expecting that we could see a notification pop up on my phone in the middle of this recording. So yeah, all that stuff. There was only one retirement. That was Carlos
Yep.
Sainz had to
Yep.
go out. This is going to be much to James's dismay. Looked like he had side pod and floor damage that
It was
ultimately got him out of
significant.
the
Yeah, it
race.
was pretty significant damage. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that was collision with Sonoda earlier on.
yeah, and yeah, that was. I think the jury's a little bit out on whether that was handled fairly in light of some of the other penalties that got doled out.
Yeah, the the penalties were pretty inconsistent because they were really strict on some things. I mean, Norris paid the price a lot with a couple of, he went off track a couple times, and he had the starting grid penalty where he rolled forward a little bit. Um, I don't know. There was a couple of ticky tack ones in there that I don't know that I would have called. I mean, I guess if you're going to destroy somebody's side pod, maybe that's worth something. But as far as Russell goes, though,
But
I
there,
think he had a lot of. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say there was no penalty given for that side pod incident, was there?
Well, no, they
Tsunoda?
talked about though there was a 5 second here. Let me look at my notes
I,
here. Um, no, I guess there was a team radio by Sign saying they should investigate Yuki, but I don't think they did anything
yeah,
about
but then
that. Yeah.
later Lawson gave the tiniest nudge
Yeah,
to
yeah, bumped
somebody,
just barely bumped him.
and he got five
Yeah,
seconds. So
yeah,
that was
that,
that. You're right. That was completely inconsistent. I mean,
yeah,
if they're gonna give Lawson five for a no damage, just a nudge, didn't affect
yeah,
anything, but then for Carlos, his race ultimately was ruined by that. So anyway,
yeah.
I kind of cut you off there.
No, that's okay. I mean, I'll be interested to see, like, with Russell's problems. He had all those mechanical problems. Where his transponder stopped working, he couldn't use DRS. His, the uh, lights up, the lights on his wheel weren't working. So He may incur a 5 second penalty, like you said. We're just now talking after the race, so we don't know official results yet. I'm secretly hoping that he gets pushed back because I had my 3 bold predictions and I'm 2 out of 3 correct. But if he gets that 5 second penalty, then that puts Leclerc onto the podium, which puts me 3 for 3. I said that Piastri would win. I said that Alpine would be in the points, and they were, with Gasly getting 7th. And then if Russell gets bumped, then Leclerc's on the podium, which was my 3rd prediction. So I'd be 3 for 3.
So I will say to the listener, will be witness that you did make these bold predictions prior to the race. I got you. You sent me a text and you said, "Here's my bold predictions for the race," and I got to say those were pretty. The let's see, Oscar winning the race was one of them, right? That's not exactly a bold prediction, but it was a prediction. So, and he kicked butt in the race. He won by 15 seconds clear of everybody. Great drive by Oscar, and I'm liking Oscar Piastri more and more, and I've got his hat on.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I picked him because I think that at the beginning of the season, Norris is kind of he's kind of the front runner of the team, and Piastri is kind of the backseat guy. But I actually think Piastri's had more pace this year. Japan, it was a mistake to hold him up. I think if they would have let him get around Lando, he could have won that race, or at least had a better shot at it, to catch Verstappen. So I don't know. I think that you're going to see at the end of this year, it might actually be Piastri who wins the whole thing. Is going to be. I mean, it's not. I'm not saying that he will, but I wouldn't be shocked because he has better pace right now than Norris does consistently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't disagree with anything you said. I agreed with your take. I don't know if you watched our last episode, but we talked about the Japanese Grand Prix, and I thought that Oscar should have been given team orders, or I guess Lando given team orders to let Oscar by. He could have. He was eating more into Lando's lead than Lando was eating into Max's, and so they should have at least tried it. Yeah. And I think James made the point that they could have given the spot back later if Oscar failed to press. But I agree. Like what I'm seeing, I don't know how much to make of this, but Lando to me is a little bit more of an emotional driver, and he doesn't. Oscar has a bit of that stone cold champion like quality that Max has, that other drivers have. It's one of those interesting things with auto racing is that you got to be opportunistic, like it's just, I don't know that there's any way around that. It's not for nice guys necessarily, and I don't know. I might be being too harsh, and Lando does seem like a nice guy, and he does, he does have the capability to win, and I won't be shocked if he wins the drivers' championship this year, but I hope that he can, when he's on track, have that killer instinct, because that's what he's going to have. He's got the talent. He can go fast, buddy, and the car is quick. So anyway, but yeah, congrats to Oscar for the win. That was pretty awesome. The P2 with George Russell. I'm kind of hoping they don't dole out a penalty for DRS. It sounds like there was not just. It seemed like they were saying at least on the broadcast, that there seems to be a problem with the DRS detection zone, is what it was sounding like. And so maybe it wasn't just George's car or the Mercedes equipment, but rather the actual FIA equipment that detects where the DRS, how close the cars are at that point before they can use DRS, because they said that other cars were having similar issues when they came through that particular detection point. So I'm hoping that's the case, and that George gets to keep his P2, even though that would ruin your bold prediction.
Well, he had a good drive. I mean, let's be fair to the guy. Yes. He drove the race really well.
Exactly.
His restarts were good. I don't fault him for his effort. It was definitely a good drive from him.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, and that's why I hope that he gets to keep the P2 because George is having a tremendous season.
Yeah,
The the P2, I know Merck wants to be challenging for podiums, but right now they are making a good push for P2 in the constructors, and kind of separating themselves as the challenger to McLaren.
yeah,
Um, let's talk about a couple things. And the other, I guess, uh, big thing was the safety car, which again,
yeah,
safety cars are huge in Formula One. They reset the strategy as far as pit stops. As soon as the safety car came out, they everybody pitted. Everybody near the top pitted and swapped tires. Uh, a couple things with the safety car. First of all, give me your thoughts. Did they need to even do a safety car? It looked like all it was for was to clean up the debris from
yeah,
the Sonoda and Sainz collision. So, what did you think?
yeah. Yeah, my note actually, I was taking notes during the race, and my note literally says, "Why no virtual safety car or no or none at all?" Because, like, to your point, here's the main thing when it comes to debris on a racetrack, and this I think goes across any racing series is the debris in the part of the track where they actually run. If it's off the apex or it's not in a spot where they're going to even hit it, then just let it go. Let's just let them run. Which that's what it seemed to me because the debris was out for a lap or two before they even called it, and nobody ran over it. So I don't feel like it was really necessary. And of course, I do like when the field kind of gets concertina back up so that there's more chance to pass and stuff. But you know, if you're Piastri and you have a big lead, I think he was up like 7 or 8 seconds at that point. He probably didn't want to see that. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not as familiar with Formula One on when they deploy a safety car or a pace car, as I would call it. Um, but I think at least do a virtual pace car. And the other comment I had about that was like it was like 3 laps, like a 3 lap pace. Like that doesn't make any sense to me to remove like 2 pieces of carbon fiber. You can't have a guy like run out onto the track and grab 2 things and run back off. It shouldn't have been that long. Maybe they did that to let everybody get into the pits, but I don't know. And I'm sure we'll talk more about pit strategy too because I have some comments there too. But yeah, so how about you? What did you think about the safety car?
Yeah, I agree. It seemed like they shouldn't have called a full safety car. Virtual safety car should have been enough. Have somebody go out there and sweep it up. It's not like they had to repair a barrier or anything. I just was like, that just seemed like excessive to me that they went full safety car. What I thought interesting stuff coming out of the safety car um, was, if I'm remembering right, didn't um, let's see, Leclerc, was it? I got a note here. Um, Pitted for mediums, was already on mediums, right? So they locked him in to a two stop by putting him on the same tire that he was already on,
Yeah,
which
that was actually another one of my notes was Leclerc's strategy was bonkers because he started on a medium, he pitted and got mediums, and then he pitted and got hards. Like he had to basically pit twice, like you said, which I
yeah,
didn't really understand because starting on a medium tire was why he got past at the beginning, and then
yep,
having to run that hard tire at the end, like he never. I didn't agree with that strategy at all. Yeah,
yeah. The hards were not working for almost anybody
no,
in this race.
no,
The softs were great, and the mediums were decent. Again,
hmm
like you said, the 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 medium tire at the start of the race made him get a bad jump compared to those on the soft, and
yeah,
so he was losing out on that. In my opinion, when the safety car came out and they had the chance to pit him, They should have gone to a different compound, and it should have been either one, soft or
Yeah.
hard. They should have
Yep.
switched to one of them. If they went hard, they could have gambled that they could have go to the end where everybody else might have to pit again.
Yep.
And Pitt was costing, short of a safety car, it was costing 22 seconds or whatever. So
Yeah.
they could have taken the risk on the hard tire. And if it didn't pan out and they hated the hard tire, they could go back to the medium later if everybody else was doing a 2-stop anyway. So I just thought that was a mistake. And
big time.
I didn't really get that.
It's kind of become a trademark of Ferrari to make strategy and pit mistakes. I don't know why that's true, but that seems to be their MO lately, to do that. I think if it would have been me, I would have started on soft to maintain your position, because he was pretty far up in the field. He was, what was he, like second? You know what I mean? So, keep him up there, and then like you said, either gamble on hard or go to medium. The softs were lasting about 10 laps, where they were like, really good for about 10 laps, and then they were falling off. But then you just, you take that pit, and to your point, you take a gamble that everyone else has to stop twice, and then you're golden. That might have even let him challenge for the race win at that point. I don't know. I mean, Piastri was pretty untouchable. His pace was pretty good. So I don't know if that would have been true.
The gamble there would have been, do I go, if they're going to change from the medium to something else, do they go soft or do they go hard? And at that point, probably hard was what they were looking at, because that would have maybe let them get to the end of the race.
Yeah.
But little did they know that the soft was actually holding up pretty well, as we saw with George, right? They put George onto a soft, which is usually like 10 laps.
Yeah, that's what it was.
A tire for like 10 laps. But he had like 30 laps to go almost. I can't remember how many it was. They put him on I put a note in here. They put him on a soft when it was lap. Let me see. I know I have this in here.
That was lap 32.
32
was when, he was he went to soft tires 32 after the safety car deployed. That's what my note says.
And I think he ended on those tires, didn't he?
He did, yeah. He stayed on those the whole time, yeah.
25 laps on a soft. And I don't know if you caught this, but they dropped in on the radio, and George was like, "That's pretty audacious, guys."
Yeah, I saw that. I took that. Yeah.
Then they went to Lando, and Lando's engineer was like, "Hey, George is worried about taking these softs all the way," and Lando was like, "I don't know why he thinks that. The soft is amazing," and he was right. I mean, Lando was right on that one. Anyway, pretty crazy. Now, speaking of pit stops. Red Bull bungled their pit stops. That was
both of them. Yeah.
That was unheard of. I mean, something seemed to be going on with their pit light that kind of gives them the green light to go out onto the track.
Yeah.
What did you think about that?
Yeah, in IndyCar, they actually have the crew chief. He puts his hand or her hand on the tire, and he holds his other hand up, and then he waves them, and then you go. So he's watching the tire changers, and Formula One doesn't do fuel, but IndyCar does fuel. So once everything's done, he gives the wave, and then you go. It was interesting that they had the light, because with the light malfunctioning on both cars, like both cars had to deal with that. Then it's like you're literally just sitting there wasting time. I mean, a second on the track is, a lot. That's significant. I thought that was a crucial misstep on their part, on the team's part.
I jotted down the length of time on those slow stops. 4.7 seconds for Max and 4.2 for Yuki. And I mean, that's 2 seconds a piece. So that was bad. And we don't usually see that kind of ineptitude from Red Bull. I guess if there was an equipment malfunction with that light, then maybe that's what's to blame. But kind of crazy. I mean, I didn't expect to see that. I do think we should talk a little bit about the very start of the race. I know we're kind of getting a little bit out of chronology here, but the start of the race was amazing. I mean, we talked a little bit about the fact that Lando was given a penalty because he was. I mean, what was he, like an inch and a half over the grid line? That's a bummer because his launch was amazing. If he would have been in position, he could have been challenging for the win of the race. He ultimately, so he shot up from P6 where he started, P6 up to third, and he so I noted that by lap 42, he was within 5 seconds of the lead, and so he lost. And this is after he'd served his 5 second penalty. And so, yeah, by lap 42, he was within 5 seconds of P1. So, I mean, he could have been challenging his teammate if he would have just stayed at the grid spot. I can't believe it. And then Max was the one who caught him. Like Max saw that he was out of his grid box.
Of course, it would be Max that would be the one to call it out.
For sure, yeah.
Of all the drivers, he'd be the one.
Oh man, yeah. So really heartbreaking. I mean, Lando was flirting with penalties the whole race.
He was.
He ultimately ended up getting a track limits warning flag, one more track limits, and he would have gotten a 5 second penalty. But I think also Max got that same warning. There was a lot of track limits stuff, but anyway, not only at the start of the race was there huge gain by Lando, but there was a lot of jostling for position right out of the gate. What were your thoughts about the start of the race?
Yeah, the start of the race was great. I think that, especially like Behrman moved up really quickly at the beginning. I like to watch the rookies because you don't really know, they're kind of wild cards. You don't really know what they're going to do. It's their first time probably at that track, at least in these, in these cars. And he was quick. I thought it was interesting. Hadjar pitted really quickly. He was only, I think he pitted on lap 7, which was interesting. But yeah, I mean, as far as the opening goes, yeah, Norris was quick right off the bat. I correctly predicted. I mean, I wasn't talking to you at the time, but starting on that medium tire for Leclerc, that cost him. He dropped back almost instantly. But it was pretty clean through the first 2 turns, which is, any kind of, especially open wheel racing, you always watch that first and second turn of a track's always going to be a question because everyone's jockeying for position and that's their best chance to get clean air. So I thought it was a pretty clean start. Like I said, I was most impressed. Behrman is the note I have. I have him. I think I wrote. Let's see. I can't find my note, but yeah, I mean, I thought he did pretty good. He did lock up he did lock up early, flat spotted his tires a little bit, but it didn't seem to affect him. I was wondering if that would cause a problem. But other than that, no, I thought the launch was good for everybody. Other than the medium tires for Leclerc.
Yeah. I had noted great starts from Russell. I mean, Russell gained position.
Yeah, Russell's was good. Yeah.
And Sainz in the Williams had a good launch and gained a couple positions. Sainz, his race though was just ultimately doomed. The Williams didn't have a great day, unfortunately. James is going to be sad about that. That's his team, and they even Albon. I don't think he scored points. I can't remember where he finished.
Here, I'll check.
It was a. It was
Albon was 12th. He ended 12th.
Right. Okay.
So he was out of the points.
So Albon and then of course Carlos didn't finish the race. So he was the only retirement. I mean, that was a bad weekend for Williams as far as the race goes, which they weren't bad in qualifying, but they just couldn't convert to points. you are very right to point out Behrman had an amazing drive. I think Behrman ended up in P10, and Haas had a great day at P8 and P10. I mean, separating themselves from the back markers of Sauber and Racing Bulls was out of the points today. Racing Bulls had a bad weekend. Hadjar, who has been doing great so far, didn't come through this time. And Lawson continues to struggle. I'm starting to get worried about Liam. I feel bad. I hope he can lock in mentally, because I hate to see the demotion from Red Bull to Racing Bulls crush his season. You know what I mean?
Yeah, when that first happened, I was really like, I'm like, God, give the guy some time. You know what I mean, in the car. But they must have seen something in the telemetry over those races to be like, nah, we need to move on as fast as possible.
Yeah.
So if he continues to struggle, like, I mean, you can't even in Racing Bulls, you can't be 17th on the grid. I mean, that's not good enough for that
Yep.
team. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, he's probably, if he can't turn it around, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's going to tank his season, and it might even crush his chance at a seat, going into next season. Like he may not
Yeah.
be in Formula One after this,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, and I feel bad about that, because when he first came in and started, I think he had to replace. Did he drive for, like, it was like Daniel Ricciardo a couple years ago when Ricciardo broke his wrist, and I think Liam filled in for him, and he was impressive then, and then they've put him on this weird roller coaster of, kind of, he comes in and replaces Daniel full time after they sack Daniel, and then he does okay, and then gets promoted in sort of a weird way over Yuki into the Red Bull, and then doesn't do well in a couple of races, and then immediately kicked back down. It just can't be easy. I know for myself, I'd have all kinds of weird mental thoughts going, what's going on with this? So hopefully he can get back on the horse. I mean, all these drivers are pretty tough and competitive, so I think he will find a groove. Especially, they got people trying to coach him up, so hopefully that happens. Um, so another rookie, Antonelli. So Antonelli, he had a confusing race. I think they pitted him 3 times. So kind of the victim of some strategy and finished outside of the points. But I mean, he's a good driver, and where did he finish? 11th, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, he was out of
P11
the
for
points
Antonelli,
in
and
11th. Yeah,
that was good considering what happened to him.
yeah, Antonelli, he I think he was the victim of strategy. That's what I wrote. He was passing cars in the field, like he gobbled up a few other drivers, but yeah, I think it was poor strategy on his team's part that did him in. I think he's got a future though, Don. I mean, he's really, he's really showing flashes of brilliance. He's on a team that can keep him consistently competitive. So, as soon as he like starts to figure it out and gets the muscle memory of each track layout down, I think he's going to be a problem for people. Like 3, 4, 5 years from now, he'll be, he'll be a contender.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to even take that long. I think he's shown that he's quick, and I said this on some previous episodes where I had my doubts about putting him in that seat after all the hubbub that Toto made about filling Lewis's seat, and they looked at all these experienced drivers and then settled on Antonelli, and I was like, I don't know, that's kind of a risk to put a rookie in there. It could be a step backwards, and he's delivered decent results, and so I don't think it's going to take very long before maybe one full season to him to familiarize himself with the tracks and the car, and then of course there's a big shuffle that happens next year when they change the regulations, so the car could go backwards if and that could throw a wrench in his progress. But I think just the familiarity with the other drivers, with the car, with the tracks, and then build his confidence up. And he should have confidence right now. The first 3 races, he's produced great results especially for himself as a rookie. And then this race, I don't like you said, I don't think this was his problem. I think that they had to pit him 3 times. I'm not sure that they made all the right calls from the pit lane, so I think it was more to do with that than with him not driving well. So yeah, we got to kind of keep my eye on Antonelli, because I think he's definitely a bright spot. And I recapping the rookies, which is a huge topic this year with 6 rookies on the grid. We talked about Lawson has not been doing great. Hadjar had a disappointing week this week, but has done well the last 2 weeks. Antonelli, I think, has been the most consistent. And then Behrman has also been right there with Antonelli. He's in a much worse car, but he himself is producing well with that car, which, I mean, I can't believe I am even saying that somebody's producing well in a Haas. They have been so bad lately. But yeah, so that's been great. And then what are the other rookies? We've talked about 4 rookies. There's 2 more.
Yeah, Hadjar. I just want to say this real quick. I think Hadjar's been really impressive, especially for, I mean, he obviously he wasn't super great today, but it just season long he's been exceeding expectations in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know about Lawson. Okay, so we talked about, who else did we talk about? We got Lawson, Hadjar, Behrman,
Antonelli.
We're missing
Bortoletto
2.
we didn't talk about.
Oh, Bortoletto, yeah.
And
Doohan. Oh, Doohan, yeah. So Doohan, Doohan was doing pretty well today. In fact, there was a point where both the Alpines were in the points, which made me obviously happy because that was one of my things. But he did drop back. They didn't show him much, so I didn't get to see like if he had a slow pit or if there was something with his strategy. They didn't really cover him enough for me to really be able to tell, especially just watching it live. I think I missed out, but I think that overall he's earning a seat, especially in the equipment he's in. And then as far as Bortoletto goes, I mentioned the other day, I thought he was I think he's doing pretty good. I think all the rookies, for the most part, maybe Lawson notwithstanding, are acquitting themselves pretty well in this series. How about you? What do you think?
Yeah, Doohan and Bortoletto are the 2 that I think are kind of, well, maybe I think we know that Lawson's in a little bit of trouble. I think Lawson, which is somewhat of a it's somewhat of a paradox, because Lawson's the one who has the most experience out of all of them, and so I think something's just snake bit him mentally. And I think when Lawson shakes that free, he's going to be more competitive. Bortoletto is hard to judge because he's in a slow car. The Sauber has had a couple bright spots. Hulkenberg has done some nice stuff with the Sauber. Scored points early I think in the first race. He scored more points than they scored all of last season. But Bortoletto, I think he's one who we won't be able to really judge too critically because he's in such a slow car. But then, when they switch to Audi next year, I think then everybody's going to be watching to see what that car is like. And then he'll maybe have a little more spotlight on him, and we'll see what happens there. Doohan, to me, this was his first weekend where he looked like he belonged in Formula One. I didn't think in the previous races he looked as good, but Doohan was competitive. And then I don't know what happened. Like you said, he dropped back in the race, and it just ended up being basically a disappointment for him, because they should have somehow, where he wasn't at like P10 and just struggling to hold on. He was somewhere like more like P8, and somehow he ended up in.
Yeah, he ended 13th. Yeah, at one point he was up to 8th. Alpine was looking really great, and then he just dropped. And like I said, I didn't ever see I wasn't paying enough attention to him to see like, what was his strategy? What tires, were he on? Was he on, was he dealing with tire deg or something? I don't know. But yeah, he definitely dropped out pretty quick. I do want to talk about real briefly, and maybe y'all have talked about it in previous episodes, but the 2026 rules and what that means for the cars. The main one I want to call out is Aston Martin. I feel like they had a really disappointing day. They've had a really disappointing season. It's really weird to see Alonso just consistently in the back of the pack. He's such a great driver, and I you'd made a comment the other day about maybe Aston Martin's kind of biding its time, or just working towards the new car. I hope that's true, because I think Aston Martin deserves to be a contender. I mean, they have such a rich history. They have great drivers. It'd be nice to see in 2026 a shakeup. Do you have any expectations or thoughts on the 2026 rules, or what teams you think will be able to monopolize on it?
Well, so admittedly, I haven't like really looked too much into what the regulations are going to change. I'm not good enough at understanding the setups of these cars to know like what, is it going to be, are they going to stick with a ground effect car? I don't really know. I haven't read enough about what the new regs are going to do to the car. All I know is that there was a pretty substantial shakeup in the power structure when they rolled out the current regs. They went from Mercedes dominating to Mercedes really struggling to figure things out. Uh, Red Bull was able to stay pretty competitive, but everybody, when they came out with the current regulations, was struggling with the porpoising issue, and it seemed to me like the teams that were able to figure that out quicker made progress quickly. But then there was a couple teams that just never quite figured it out, and Mercedes was kind of one of them. So I'll be looking for that. I don't know if I expect there to be a shakeup like that, but I'll be looking for that in the new regulations. Will this knock McLaren down? Will Aston benefit? To kind of get back to your original point, I do think that Aston is. It seems clear to me that they're putting all their eggs in the 2026 basket. I mean, they signed Adrian Newey, who is this legendary designer that helped Red Bull win a bunch, and they picked him up. Aston built, Lawrence Stroll had invested all this money in a new facility. It's this evidently this state of the art, enormous facility. They've got their own wind tunnel. We did talk about this on an earlier episode, and I still haven't gone back and figured this out. There's a lot of restrictions about wind tunnel time, and the worse you do in the season, the more wind tunnel time you get during the next season, and the better you do, the less wind tunnel time you get. So it's I don't understand how having your own wind tunnel helps a ton. Like if you're restricted as to the amount of time you can spend in there. The only thing I could think of is it's easier to get your cars there. You don't have to ship them to a wind tunnel, so that's a little bit less expensive, which they have a cost cap now. The other thing is that maybe they can charge other other teams to come use the wind tunnel and get a little revenue out of it. I'm not 100% sure what all the huge benefit is, but or maybe they can use the wind tunnel to test parts, and they're not restricted on that time, and you can test your wings or something without a car attached to it. So I don't know. I don't know all the ins and outs of that. I'd have to look into that. So I don't know if you know anything about that. If you do, you can definitely school me about that. But I think those things, the new facility and poaching Adrian Newey,
Yeah.
clearly show that they're looking to design and do R&D to make their 2026 car, because they don't seem to be putting anything towards their
No,
2025
they
car.
really don't.
They're
They
just
really don't.
and I like you. I think Fernando, the last 2 years has been painful for me to watch. A guy of Fernando's caliber who's
Yeah.
older. He based purely on age, he wouldn't be expected to win any races. I don't think anybody his age has ever won a Grand Prix. And so to see those years where he's still out there being kind of squandered is
Yeah.
kind of painful to watch. And
Yeah.
um, but he, 2 years ago, he took a bunch of podiums. I think he got second and third. He never won, but he got a bunch of third place finishes, which was huge for their team, at the position that they were in. And so then last year he just dropped off. They couldn't get anything, and this year is kind of like the same as last year. They're not doing well. So yeah, kind of a bummer. I don't want to see him wasting his final few years of being a
Yeah.
racer in a slow car, because I think when he's on, I don't know if there's anybody that's really more crafty or better at just straight
Yeah.
up racing than Alonso.
Well, I mean, also if Stroll was doing really well and Alonso was struggling, then we could say, oh well, maybe it's just he's kind of around the bend in his career, and it's maybe time to hang it up. But when both cars are like totally struggling, it's clear it's really just the equipment. I'm really interested in 2026 because I do want to see. I like shakeups in motorsports. I think it's important when you can have top teams not be on such sure footing going into a season with data and engineering and things like that, because that's ultimately where they do the best is with those things. I mean, you can afford the better drivers, so obviously you put Max in an Alpine and he's still going to be better than the Alpine drivers because he's a better driver. But you know, the equipment has a lot to do with it. When Max was dominating, when he won his 4 titles or whatever, he's doing it in equipment that's clearly superior. He's easily passing people, the whole time. It's sort of, I mean, like you said with parity, McLaren's not quite as dominant right now, but they are the dominant car right now.
Yeah.
Um, and so objectively speaking, and so when they're hunting down another car, it's probably going to happen. I was actually super impressed with with Leclerc holding Norris back for as long as he did. I felt like he raced him clean. I don't think. I mean, he was a little defensive. IndyCar wouldn't have liked the way that he did that because you're not allowed to make more than one reactive move in an IndyCar if
Yeah.
someone's trying to hunt you down. But I thought he raced cleanly. When Norris finally got past him, he got past him like he gave him the room to get past him.
Yeah.
Um, and then same with Russell at the end. Being able to hold him off. I thought that the parity was there. But I do think that right now as we speak, the McLarens are the class in the field. From an equipment standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think you can argue that, and I think that's all the chatter I'm hearing. I mean, the McLaren is the fastest vehicle out there, and they've got a great driver lineup now. So to go back to your point about the overtake on Leclerc that Lando had, that was a great move. I gotta say, like he went around the outside of him
Yeah.
on what turn was it? Anyway, he went around. He took an outside line to get around him. It was a sweet move, and it was at I think lap 52, so near the end of the race to grab a position.
Yeah,
And
lap 52. Yeah.
so yeah, a really good move, which was good to see from Lando, because what I was really starting to think was I just don't see the aggression from Lando sometimes. That's what I felt like happened last week against Max. Is he just wasn't attacking him, and I'm not sure what that was about. So it was good to see a little aggression, but then I thought he didn't again. He couldn't push it any harder to get past George.
Yeah.
And that could have been too because George is on soft tires. I don't know if that gave him a little bit
Yeah.
harder.
But both of those battles contributed to Piastri's win because, as they're battling each other, he's just out there in clean air getting farther and farther down the road. Pretty impressive from him, though. He got the hat trick. I mean, he qualified on the pole. He got fastest lap and he won the race. I mean, you can't have a better weekend than that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, total domination from Oscar, and all
Yeah.
credit to him. I mean, I'm liking Piastri more and more as these races go along. Let's see. I think we've covered pretty much all the stuff that I had noted. that were noteworthy during the actual race. Um,
I just had
the
like two more. I had two more things to just kind of briefly mention. We don't have to really dig
No,
into them, but
that's okay.
is that
Let's
okay?
talk it out. Yeah, let's
Okay,
hit
yeah.
your
So the
points.
okay, so the first one was I like the in-car camera view where it's like the camera's in the helmet. IndyCar's been also experimenting with that. My only problem with it is they need some sort of like stabilization because it's really shaky. And I get it, like that's what the drivers are experiencing. But when you're in a car that's like bumpy, your eyes adjust. Like you don't see bumpy, you just see what you see, and it just feels bumpy. But in a camera, you know, if a camera's bumpy, it's hard to kind of tell what's going on. So I do like the view. I just wish they would use technology to stabilize it like live time, or at least give like a delay on it where you can kind of really experience what they're experiencing. But I really like the camera being really like sitting that low in the car is really cool. Um, you know, I don't think we've really ever seen that before. So did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mean, the F1 subscription allows you. I think you can go and view at any time from any racer's camera. And so it's a pretty slick feature. I'll just say that to the our listeners if they're not already subscribers. It's a cool feature. Like you go in there and you can just like pick a driver and just I think it does. You don't get the commentary when you're doing that, but you can just go and just follow a racer around, and it's pretty awesome. In fact, one of the reasons that I've liked doing that is because I have a really hard time remembering like what I can't tell during the broadcast what turn they're on or whatever. Like I can't memorize what the turns look like from the view of the broadcast. So like if you go in and follow a driver for a lap or two laps, you start to remember, kind of like when you're playing a video game, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
you're doing a racing video game, and like you get in there and you just start driving, and you know, eventually after you've done it 3 or 4 times, you remember what turns are coming up where. So that's kind of a fun feature to go explore around, and it's cool just to see from a driver's perspective, you know.
yeah,
Second of all, about your point with the the stabilization, I think they are working on that. It's there's a gyro cam thing that they do. I don't remember if it's though in the cockpit or on the driver's helmet. It's more like it's mounted above maybe the halo or something. So you get kind of like the same view, but then it's adjusting for that bumpiness so that it's a much smoother picture. So yeah, keep exploring around in that F1 app because
yeah.
you can look and see what they've got for camera
Yeah,
angles.
I'll have to check that out. I hadn't seen that. And then my last point that I wrote down here was I thought the undercuts were really good, and I think it had to do with tire deg, them being getting track position through undercuts. So I thought that was something I hadn't seen in the previous races as much this season. And I don't know if that's because of the surface of Bahrain. You know, it's pretty rough. They kept saying the word sandpaper, which you never want to hear when you're a race car driver. But you know, I thought that the undercuts were the best strategy, out there.
Yeah, so the undercut I think was more critical here because uh, you're right about the surface, but also because of uh, I think because of the nature of the circuit where there is more overtaking and stuff like that. Because yeah, we saw teams trying for undercuts and overcuts in the previous races too, and it just didn't have as much effect. But it seemed to play into this one a little bit more, and I think that may be why like Doohan ended up out of the points, you know, um, because he was getting out strategized by other teams. So I'll say this too. I guess the last point that I had wanted to make was about Ferrari. I've been really closely watching Ferrari this year. Ferrari, I think, coming into this season, you know, on the heels of finishing strong last season, I thought that they'd be contending with McLaren, and they really have not this year. They've been kind of positioning themselves more as like a third or fourth in the constructors championship, um, and that sort of I don't know, it kind of got shored up for me again this week. They took P4 and P5. They're not on the podium. It's not like they're slow, but they aren't the fastest cars out there, and they're getting shown up by Mercedes right now. So,
Just that strategy,
yeah,
Don. Yeah, they need to be more consistent with their strategy and their pits. I mean, that's the bottom line for that team. They have, in my opinion, they have two world class drivers. I like Leclerc a lot. Um, I think he's one of the better drivers. That's like kind of one of the more underrated drivers that has the potential. And of course, Hamilton needs no introduction. So if they could give them a better strategy, I think even their cars are competitive. That's really the missing pieces. They're just, they're in their own heads as a team too much, I think, to be
little
effective.
snake bit on their own strategy
Yeah,
calls.
for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you could be right. I have definitely seen some strategy. And then I think, I keep coming back to this. They had a double disqualification a couple races ago in China, I think it was. And that set them back pretty far because they would have taken good points.
Yeah.
This race, I think it was a decent. I felt like okay, it was Leclerc finished fourth and
Fourth.
Hamilton
Yeah.
fifth, but it was more of like
Yep.
a disappointment for Charles, who probably should have been on the podium, and
Yes.
more of a squeezed a little, and Lewis squeezed a little more out of it then. So it was like,
Yeah.
but they kind of offset each other because they finished 4-5, which is a decent haul of points, more than maybe a better result than like Mercedes got P2,
Yeah.
but then a P11. So,
Right.
you know, good haul of points, but they probably should have been on the podium. So Ferrari there. And then I guess the last thing, this just popped into my mind. We should probably talk about Tsunoda's drive because Tsunoda scored points. P9, I think he was. And
Yeah.
so his
P9.
first points as a Red Bull driver,
Yep.
which P9 would not normally be a good result. But when Max finished P6 because he overtook Gasly
Gasly. Yeah. He took
right on the
Gasly.
last lap.
Yep.
But otherwise was only 2 positions. If he didn't get that last overtake, it was, P7, P9. To me, that is a good sign for Tsunoda. I don't know what you think,
Yeah.
but I think that's a good sign for Tsunoda because them being in the same proximity position-wise means that Tsunoda's coming to terms with the car where lots of other drivers have not come to terms with the car. So I'll be watching him very closely over the next couple races. I think that this is an upward trajectory for Tsunoda.
Yep.
Maybe a clear sign that he should have been in the car all along and that the swap for Lawson for Tsunoda was the right call to make. Anyway, just a couple thoughts that I had there. And so the next race is Saudi Arabia, Jeddah. And so let's be watching Tsunoda at Saudi Arabia and see if he comes out, surging after what I would say was a decent result, even though P9 for a Red Bull is not typically considered a good result.
Yeah, but I think that first of all I agree 100% with what you're saying, and I think the main takeaway here is I think the Red Bull cars are hard to drive right now, and I think that number one, I think Max, throwing it around the track is just because he's Max, but Tsunoda being able to do that shows his prowess behind the wheel as well. Like you said, I mean he's not getting a car that's necessarily going to be easy to drive. So the fact that he's 2 maybe 3 spots behind Max within 4 races or 3 races, I guess, is a good sign. And you and James talked last week a lot about him in Japan and how he did there. But I think he continues to acquit himself, and like you said, he's in the points this week, which is great.
Yeah, I mean the disparity between Max and Liam, for example, was 15 positions or 12 positions. So if he can keep squeezing up that gap, that's going to be good news for Tsunoda. Okay, so Jeddah is the next circuit that we will be talking about. So next week we'll talk about what the results of that race are. I always look forward to this Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. It's a relatively new one on the calendar. I think maybe the last like 3-4 seasons it's been on the calendar. It's the circuit itself. for some reason, I really love the circuit. I don't know that it's really conducive to a lot of overtaking, but it's a very narrow circuit that like it goes up one side and it's just high speed turns, then a hairpin and high speed turns back down the other way. So that's what I liked about it. It seems like it's a very fast track, and qualifying will be a huge deal. It's also very narrow. There's a lot of jeopardy there where people can hit a wall. So anyway, we'll be looking forward to that. I guess um, we'll say like, do you have any kind of outlook, or do you want to make one or two bold predictions about what might happen in Saudi Arabia?
Oh yeah. Why don't you go first? You put me on the spot, and I'll
Okay,
follow. I'll follow your lead.
so I'm gonna say that Max takes a podium in Saudi Arabia. I think that that's going to be a bold prediction, which is not what you would normally say is a bold prediction. But I'll say that, and then I'm sorry if this is stealing from you, but I think we're gonna build on the Gasly performance, and Gasly's going to be. I'm going to say he's going to finish. Let's just say top 7, which would be big for Alpine. But I thought that maybe he's finding a stride, so let's look for that. Yeah, what can you come up with?
I'll agree with you on Alpine. I'll say Alpine continues its role in the points, and I'll say Antonelli on the podium. There's my hot take.
I like that one. That is going bold.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah,
I was 2 for 3 this week, so I can't. I can miss next week if I need to.
I was really tempted to go somewhere with Haas, but like I'm being very tentative with Haas. But like, they've got a fast car, and this
Mm-hmm.
is a fast car track. So I'm assuming that their tires don't get chewed up, or that Behrman doesn't go into the wall or something like that. Like they
Yeah,
maybe another bold take would be another double points finish for Haas.
yeah.
So
You
I'll,
could.
I'll
I
just
could
go.
see Ocon in the top, maybe even the top 5. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
Top.
So
Well, maybe not top 5. Maybe 6 or 7 somewhere in there. You know.
I really need to go back and like make a list of all these hot takes that we do, and then tally them up at the end of the season or something. See how we did. If you watch the episodes, sometimes I go way out there.
That's what you got to do.
So,
That's
right.
part of the fun.
You can't go. I'm always saying, if you're gonna go bold, go all the way. You don't
Yeah.
take some tepid.
Yeah, I mean
take.
that's why my hot take was Piastri was going to win. Although I did say that before qualifying, so at least I've got that. But I mean that's not a bold prediction. That's just of course he is. So
Right.
you know.
All right. Well, this is awesome. Thanks for filling in for James. And then I think James is out again next week. So assuming nothing changes, it's going to be you and me again for our Saudi Arabian recap. But until then, adios.
Thank you so much for having me.